Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from Primary Ad 1186, and before we do get into it, I do want to give you a couple of trigger warnings on the story, one of covert incest and some somewhat graphic talk about sex as well. So if you do want to skip it, please feel free to do so. Timestamps are always down in the description and along the timeline below. Thank you. And it says, my mother-in-law asked my husband to subscribe to her OnlyFans to support her. Whoa, indeed. Posting this on my personal page because the original was removed. For her account for obvious reasons. My mother-in-law, 40 female, has always been very open about sex. When I first met my husband, she managed a sex toy store. About a year ago, she started working towards a degree on sexual health and wellness. She knew models for a local artist, and around a month ago, she started an OnlyFans account. Sex and openness about it has always been an extraordinary normal thing for her. I have absolutely nothing against working in the sex industry. That's her forte. And I'm happy that she's doing well and enjoying what she does. However, I've had some slight concerns about it before, not specifically her working in the sex industry or her openness in general, more so how open she is, especially with her own kids. For example, my husband and I started dating in high school when she was managing the sex store. When she would come home from work, she would stop into my husband's, boyfriend at the time, room and hand us sample sizes of different lubes and sensation creams saying, I thought you guys might want to try some of these. It made us both pretty uncomfortable, and it was extremely awkward to have my boyfriend's mum hand me things to try sexually with her son. But nonetheless, the most conversation that my husband and I ever had about it back then was about how awkward it was. Awkward and uncomfortable enough that we never actually used these things. They just piled up on a shelf by his bed. Another time while we were dating, fresh out of high school, we were hanging out with his sisters. His mum was still working at the sex toy shop. Once in a while, she would come home with silly toys, and on this night, she walked in with a 1 foot long glittery dildo. She playfully whipped it around towards us like a sword. His sisters screamed and ran from her, and for a while we all laughed and had fun about it, snatching it from one another and chasing each other around with their glitter schlong. Eventually my husband... dearie me. Glitter schlong. Eventually my husband's sister, 17 at the time, said something like, Mum, you better not have brought that home to use. That's crazy. My husband chimed off an ooh, saying he didn't need to think about that. And his mum laughed and replied, oh no, that's silicone. You know the toys I use are glass. Again, my husband made a weird face but didn't say anything. When we got to his room, I said that it was weird that his mum talked to her children about what she uses to get her rocks off. And he told me that she's always been way too open about things that none of them wanted to know. But that she's always been this way. So he's just gotten used to tuning it out. As time went on, I got used to the openness. And it was just that, being too open about personal stuff within conversation. However, yesterday the openness went too far. My husband and I were sitting in our living room watching TV. My husband got a text from his mum and opened it and had a visceral reaction. He tossed his phone down, stood up, walked away from it with his hands over his face, while saying things like, oh my god, and holy shit under his breath. Naturally, I thought that someone had died, so I started frantically asking what was wrong. All he said was that he didn't even want to open his phone again. I asked again what was wrong, and he told me that his mum just sent him pictures. I was confused, but my concerns started to grow. I asked what he meant by pictures, and he hesitated before saying, I don't want to ask you to look, but I can't open it back up to delete it myself, so I need you to. My stomach dropped. I opened his phone to see what was there, and I immediately felt nauseous. There was a text that read, Hey, I know you've always supported me, and I wanted to see if you'll be willing to subscribe to my OnlyFans so that I can get my numbers up while I'm still getting started. Of course, I don't expect or want you looking through it, but the more subscribers numbers I have, the more engagement I can get. I was also wondering if you'd be willing to share my link to some of your friends at work. Husband is in a male-dominated blue-collar job. The pics I included are to send them with the link, but don't tell them I'm your mum. And under it was the pictures. There were 3 nude photos of his mother, not just naked in a mirror or a pic of the boobs kind of photos. They were full-on pornographic photos. One of her tied up in BDSM gear, one of her face down, ass up on her bed, and one of them with her legs spread and a dildo halfway in her mouth. My blood was boiling. I deleted what she sent, and my husband and I were both silent for a moment. I didn't know what else to say or do, so I broke the silence by asking, "What now?" My husband told me to block his mum on his phone, so I did. I asked if this was something his mum had done before, and he said no. He told me that in the past she asked if I wanted to see pictures of the drawing she posed for. He's always felt a bit guilty saying no, so he simply didn't respond when she asked, and she never sent it. Then my husband went pale and started walking to the bathroom saying he felt sick. While he was in the bathroom, I blocked his mum on my phone as well, including her social medias. When my husband came back out of the bathroom, he called his sister. He asked her if she was with her mum, and when she said no, he explained to her what all had just gone down. His sister was also speechless. Then he asked her not to say anything to other family members right now, and explained that neither him or I would be in contact with their mum for a while. He also told her that any time we were home for a visit, he would let his sisters know so that we could plan to see them, but his mum would not be included in those plans from here on out. My mother-in-law quickly realized that she was blocked on everything by both of us, and by that night, she had the whole family blowing up our phones asking why. The constant messages haven't stopped, and so far we've just muted our phones as we don't even know what to say. How do you explain that your mother sent you a homemade porn? I think you fucking say exactly that. She just sent us pornographic photos. That's why she's blocked. That's why we don't want her around. It's weird as shit. Conscious survey says, girl, that's insane. Mother-in-law is far too open with that crap. I knew my parents had sex, but what happened between them stayed with them as it should be. Parents are there for talking and answering questions. When my eldest left the toy out at 18, I asked them not to leave it out, and if they knew how to clean it properly so they don't get an infection or anything after each use. I bought a bottle of proper cleaner and just left it in their room. I don't need to know any more. I will answer questions but won't go into personal detail. Sending OnlyFans pics to your adult son to share with a co-worker is disgusting. Depending on who he works with, could also get him fired if he shared them. That woman is not using her brain. There's being open with your kids, and then there's this. What the actual fuck? Grouchy Storm replies saying, unblock her for a minute. Tell her to call off the flying monkeys or you will send everyone proof of why you guys have blocked her, even if you can't/don't want to retrieve them. Good luck. Opie came in with her first update and says, many asked for an update, so here is a small one for now. When my husband got home from work today, he did have me recover the messages for evidence, should it be needed. I screenshotted the message with timestamps and each of the photos. In the photos I scribbled over her not so private areas as well. After that I sent the images to my phone and once again deleted the messages from his phone, both in his mother's text and mine, her husband's request. This was something that several people suggested in the comments of my previous post, and believe me, we're on the same page before I even read them. My husband and I are also regulars in therapy, both individual and couples counseling. When we got married, we agreed that doing counseling from the get-go was a good idea. Not because we have problems in our marriage, but it gives us tools to confront issues in the future and keeps us on the same page 100% of the time. That being said, I asked my husband if he'd ever mentioned his mother's sexualness in his own therapy, and he said no, since it is how she's always been raised. He saw it as mostly normal. I suggested that this should most definitely be brought up at his next session, and he agreed. I also asked if there was anything that had happened that was a bit overboard in the past. Outside a conversation, he said his mother would often come home from work with new lingerie, and she would put it on and wear it around the house for the rest of the night as if it were regular clothes. When she would do this, he would either stay in his room or go to a friend's house because it made him uncomfortable. Several people asked why there hasn't been a conversation about her talking about uncomfortable topics. There has been. When my husband and I were dating, both of us minors, she would talk to my husband about our sex life explicitly. Some of the questions she asked him are if he likes girls who are clean shaven, if him and I were using lube, if I preferred ribbed condoms, if we had tried certain positions, even if I preferred stimulation via clitoris or G-spot. When she would ask these things, my husband simply wouldn't answer with more than, "I don't know," but eventually he did tell her to stop. He told her that he didn't want to talk about these things with her, that he knew I wouldn't want her talking about those things with her, and that her asking this stuff made him extremely uncomfortable. Her response was to get defensive and act like she'd been disrespected. She would say that sex was normal, that she should be able to have these conversations with her son. She even accused him of shaming her sexuality. So he went back to ignoring the questions altogether. Some suggested that I have an in-person conversation with her about this happening. Not only do we live far away, but we aren't ready for a conversation about it, and we especially aren't ready to discuss it in person. This happened yesterday afternoon, and it will honestly be a very long time before any sort of communication happens with her at all. I did find out that she'd been telling family. She's telling them that she asked if her son supported her, not if he would subscribe and share her content. That is why family's been reaching out and asking why we've blocked her for asking that. We'll be telling family exactly what happened, but we aren't quite ready to do so yet, and that will come within the next few days. We're still processing all of what's going on. My husband has a therapy session tomorrow, and we will have one together the next day. We will likely wait to talk about this with family until after our sessions. That way we can get our ducks in a row a bit more. And we are even considering legal action. Again, that is something we will bring up with our therapist before continuing. That is the main reason we took the screenshot evidence. For those curious, yes, mother-in-law is young. She had my husband at 16 to 17, and we got married young as well. Very common among my family, and in the field of work, in the field of work he is in. And that field of work is the military. For him, sharing his mother's content would heavily affect him. Not just a firing, that would give him a sharp sexual harassment / assault response and prevention case, and a possible dishonorable discharge, which would make it extremely difficult to go on after the military. That's all I have for an update right now, but trust that there will be another. Thanks so much for all the advice and support I received on my last post. I seriously gained such good info from the comments, and it's been really helpful. Then sometime later, Opie comes in with what they title their final update and said, "My husband and I have spoken with therapists about the entire situation, and we've drawn a conclusion to how we will handle things. As advised by our therapist, and based on what we've planned ourselves, my mother-in-law will be cut off until she does the self-work and is no longer overly sexual towards family. That being said, my husband and I are prepared for her to be cut off permanently. She will likely not attend therapy herself, as she sees it as unimportant. I'm not sure if her opinion comes from her visiting a therapist previously, but she does believe that therapists just tell you everything wrong with yourself and why you need to change. They don't actually try to help you with your mental health, just make it worse. I'm sure everyone can imagine what has caused her to draw those conclusions. As of now, husband and I will not be pushing legal action. We've decided that for us, at this time, we'd prefer to lay down the law in what we feel comfortable with. If that is respected, that is great and nothing more will come of it, on our end. If that isn't respected, and there are more attempts to reach us such as creating accounts etc., we will most likely seek out a restraining order. As I mentioned in a previous update, I've saved the screenshots from the original issue, so we will have that to present if needed. On to family. As a reminder, husband's side of the family was blowing up our phones, asking why we would block mother-in-law. What mother-in-law told him was that we blocked her after she simply asked for our support in the thing she's doing. What they didn't know was that she sent photos of herself. We told them. Didn't send the photos of course, but did describe them. Things were understood quickly and nothing more was said. I don't know if family has taken it upon themselves to confront mother-in-law about this. If they have, great, she needs it. If they haven't, oh well. Now, from my own perspective, I was raised in a family where everything was very taboo. Sex, sexuality, our bodies, even our periods were difficult to talk about. So much so that when my mum found out I had a crush on a boy when I was 13, I cried and profusely apologized because I thought I'd be in a lot of trouble. Asking questions wasn't okay either. So when I did have questions, I couldn't simply ask. For example, I overheard my mum say the word porn and didn't know what it meant. When I asked my parents what the word porn was, I got sent to my room. So at 7 years old, I grabbed the family tablet and googled porn. Saw a bunch of naked people, got scared, put the iPad back in the living room. When my parents checked the search history that night, I was screamed at and not allowed to touch electronics for the rest of the year. With all that in mind, a sex-positive family was so incredibly foreign to me. The idea of being able to go to your mum, ask about sex or your body, and have a conversation instead of getting in trouble was completely new. When my husband and I were dating, I never knew that his mum was going too far. I thought that this simply was sex positivity. Of course, I had intuition that things went too far at times, like when I questioned the toy conversation, but when the response to my questions were, she's just really open, I chalked it up to that and didn't really question it anymore. To answer some common questions, my mother-in-law is not this much when it comes to my sister-in-laws. I always assumed it was because they were younger, but the pictures being sent to only my husband really hammered the nail into the covert incest coffin. Come to find out, mother-in-law also isn't quite as open with sister-in-laws. She's open about her own doings, but doesn't meddle in their own like she did my husband. I mentioned before that she would question my husband on our sex life when we were dating. Another phone call with middle sister-in-law revealed that she's absolutely never done that to the girls. In fact, there have been times where she's overheard my sister-in-law saying something about their boyfriends, and she would say, "Ugh, lower your voice, I don't want to know," whereas she would straight up ask my husband about sex. Another common question was, where's father-in-law? He's never been in the picture. My husband's dad left when mother-in-law was pregnant with her youngest daughter. Mother-in-law also doesn't have a father herself because he left when she was a baby, and there aren't a lot of men in the family. 2 distant uncles and a few cousins, but as far as close family, my husband was the only male growing up. And yes, some people got it right. My husband looks exactly like his bio dad. Same build, same hair type and color, same bone structure, same eye shape, even a very similar birthmark. That fact makes that even more gross altogether. And finally, we don't have children. However, I have always had concerns about leaving children alone with her because of the openness. I will know when my future children are ready to know about certain topics. Those conversations will come from my husband and I, and only us. I've always been concerned that mother-in-law would discard our opinions on that and give our future children the birds and the bees talk, whenever she felt like it. Unless she cannot fix whatever is wrong in her brain, she will not ever be alone with our kids, and even possibly know them. But overall, this is my final in the whole situation. The original post was removed in this sub, so it's been reposted on my personal page for those interested in reading. I remain active on this account to answer questions, so if any other questions arise, ask away and I'll be happy to answer. Thank you so much to everyone for all the advice. I didn't even know the term covert incest before posting, and I'm grateful that I do now. It's given my husband and I something to do a little research about, and it's changed our perspective on the past quite a bit. My husband will be taking all of this into therapy more than just his last sessions. In my next personal session, I will likely bring it up again too. It's also a topic that will be discussed at counseling together, more than just yesterday's session as well. Again, thank you everyone. I'd never heard of the term covert incest before, but on Wikipedia it says covert incest is a form of non-sexual abuse. Examples of covert incest could be the parent sharing intimate, graphic details of their own sex life to a child, practicing voyeurism, exhibitionism, and it just lists pretty much everything that's going on in this one post. Incredibly sad though that kind of behavior became normalized to him because it's been going on for so long. But it's always the flying monkeys in these situations that come to the defense of mother-in-law. They've just heard one side of the story and they're automatically on OP. I just think, bloody hell, does people not think about what might be going on? Obviously, I don't think they're going to jump straight away to mother-in-law's current behavior, but to just automatically jump on OP and say, oh, you're not supporting your mum for whatever it is, not asking what the business is or anything like that, just seems a bit weird. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And let's move on to another story. Our next story comes from the Best of No Updates subreddit from Johnny Jane, who says, my 28 male girlfriend, 27 female, won't stop speaking in Gungan, and I'm losing my mind. Together 5 years. Just for anyone who may not know, I'm sure you do, but Gungans, if I'm even pronouncing that correctly, are a species in the Star Wars universe. It starts off. My girlfriend and I met in college 8 years ago and started dating a little over 5 years ago. She's always been a huge Star Wars fan. She even has a Star Wars tattoo, not of Jar Jar surprisingly. I like Star Wars enough, but I'm not a fanboy or anything, just a casual kind of fan. We dated long distance, and 2 years after we graduated, we moved in together. I'm military and she relocated to be with me. Things were great. She worked part-time and took care of the house/pets. Things changed about a year ago. She was mad about the ending of the last Star Wars movie that came out and started getting back into the prequels. She started quoting them sometimes, and it was kind of funny at first. Once COVID hit and we quarantined, it got more intense. She would quote Jar Jar a lot. It didn't matter to me because we weren't around anyone, and again, it was funny in small doses. I first realized it was a problem towards the end of spring. Her quoting Jar Jar got excessive. It was like she was trying to quote him in response to like everything. It was honestly a bit cringy. If she bumped into me, she'd say, "Excuse," I can't do it. "Excuse me." Or if she dropped something, she'd go, "Me so clumsy." I am sorry. If we left the house at all, she'd loudly yell, I'm not doing it, "So good being home," when we walked inside. One time when we were cuddling and stuff, she whispered in my ear in a Jar Jar voice, "Oh moi moi, I love you." Instantly killed the mood. I regret not saying something then, but I figured she would stop eventually. I was wrong. In June they lifted some restrictions and we started doing more stuff. I was promoted and had a small ceremony. My boss, a pretty high up officer, was there, and after the ceremony I introduced them. She said to him, you sir Bombad General." He chuckled awkwardly and left the conversation. I was so mad at her. We talked and she said she would tone it down. She did for a couple of weeks and didn't do the Jar Jar talk as much. We've talked about getting married, and I had been wanting to propose for a while, before the Gungan speak started, but with COVID, it kind of ruined my plans. July came and I figured I should stop delaying and decided I would do it. We went for a hike together and I started my speech about how I loved her and she made me happy and everything, and asked her what she would think about us taking the next step. She just said, "Okie dokie." I stopped the proposal there. I feel bad because I blew up at her a little, but goddamn, she already ruined so many moments with her stupid Gungan talk. You would think after that fight she might finally stop, but she didn't. Things were more or less normal for a few months. I just didn't try to bring her around anyone. Then I FaceTimed with my mum and brother a few days ago, and I think it was the final straw. My mum asked if we're planning on coming home for Christmas, and she literally said to my mother, "'Tis demanded by the gods, it is." No one found it funny, but she was laughing hysterically. I ended the call soon after and texted our group chat to apologize. I told her she needed to cut it out once and for all. She said it was just part of who she was and it's not a big deal. There are so many other examples I can't even list here, and these are just the biggest ones. She's always saying "Misa" and "Yusa" about everything and sending Jar Jar memes and just generally being so annoying with her Gungan worship. So what should I do? I truly love her and she is great in a lot of ways, but I don't think I can take it anymore. How do I get her to stop it? A commenter says to OP, "I can see how it's annoying. I can also see how someone else may find that extremely endearing about her and a reason she is a treasure, especially if they're a total Star Wars fan as well. If she hasn't done it before, it's likely due to stress or a quirky way to cope. I'd asked if she could refrain from using it in professional settings. Opie says it was endearing at first, and it probably would be fine if she only did it around me. Solid Mathematician says, does she still have a job? And does she have any of her own friends besides you? I struggle to see how she could act like this and be taken seriously. Opie says honestly she struggles to make friends. She talks to her family a lot and they have a lot of inside jokes like this. I mean, every once in a while it would be fine, but it sounds like it's just taking over her life slowly. And I was just left with a question after this one. Of all the Star Wars characters in the Star Wars universe, why Jar Jar Binks? Oof. But what do you guys make of this situation? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. Just a huge thank you for being here today, getting involved in the stories, your love, your support, your time. It always means the absolute world to me. So thank you so, so much. And hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Take care and much love.